All right. Rob in particular, I haven't seen the new Matrix movie that came out last year, but just hearing the feedback from talking with my sister, I already have a firm grasp of what it seems like the story was trying to convey. And before, I was under the impression that it was a transition piece, right? Of trying to convey the journey of, and now I'm getting more of the vibe that it's literally just, we had to make this movie, and you can tell just by watching it how it was mandatory. And that the Matrix itself makes less and less sense, because it's really just explaining things that are really happening as opposed to like the theology of the films. My sister mentioned that, and I'll have to go back and watch, but man, that's how many of her hours of my life that sometimes I don't even spend watching the stuff that I'm really into, let alone want a theological piece on. But that the Matrix itself, the real world, the robots and whatnot, that maybe that was just part of the actual Matrix and the program and everything. And I could see that would make perfect sense. Like, oh, so every time that the other ones succeeded, it never really succeeded. It was just a reiteration, rescoped, rescaled with new figureheads, and then restarted over and over and over. And even though we think we saw success in the last iteration of 1, 2, and 3, nothing ever changed. It was all a play to keep the robots in charge and the humans as sources of energy. The part that is mind-boggling to me is that because of the IP, because of, the Wachowskis not necessarily wanting to make this movie, but to try and make something out of it, that's where you get into, I think they're dispensing some real information inside of the movie. Like, hey, Hollywood is a machine. And at a minimum, I think that we can all agree to the business machine aspect of the thing, that it's got to keep cranking. And there will be reiterations no matter how you turn it. And if the movie makes money, then it's gonna keep cranking. I've talked about this with my mom, that remakes are a mixture of IP, especially now. IP is king now. And perhaps reiterating these movies for the next generation that go back and watch the original part of it. We don't have that many storylines to deal with, so let's do it for the next generation and see how it takes. Let's see how this movie performs this time around, because we have the stats from last time, and that the comparative process can show success or failure and will provide additional data to prove whether or not it is worth doing again. Psycho was a hit, and it was a continued hit through the ages, so they remade it. But they didn't do anything to change it. And I'm not saying you need to change the story, but you should do artistic interpretations that are different. not just a mock-up of the same stinking thing. Stories that are being retold should be adapted, not retold. And it's not like you go into the future and you put everybody in like flight gear and then you give them goggles, like Back to the Future 2, if you would. But like even Back to the Future 1 and 2, it's almost a reiterative story, but in a slightly more creative way where you're revisiting the storyline as it already existed. I don't know. This thought goes everywhere constantly. Why are we reproducing the same content over and over and over again through the next generation? That has to be a legitimate question that people can ask and have a real answer. And I don't know that we would get a real answer. And it's not going to be because of artistic interpretation. Because if it was, then we would see a new version. You know, worst case scenario when it comes to like a slasher. Okay, so yes, Jason Voorhees, Mike Myers, Freddy, they're all the names in slasher horror. But what if we make a new character that is so good he becomes part of the conversation, as opposed to, well, you see how similar the story is to these already, let's just tell it through the scope, through the lens of, hey, you know, it was popular then, and it will be popular again. It's a crazy process to me. I don't see the need. I guess I'm up back into this. Sorry, I had to back up. Not always the best at that, so. Thoughts on movies, you know.